This story delves into themes of disappearance and unsettling psychological mystery. Listener discretion is advised. You think you know what an empty playground looks like after midnight. You picture the swings swaying gently in the breeze, the slide gleaming under the distant streetlights, an innocent, silent testament to the joy of daylight. But what if it's not empty? What if something is there, something that shouldn't be? What if the silence isn't peaceful, but heavy, suffocating, holding its breath? This isn't a story about forgotten toys or childish mischief. This is about the kind of emptiness that screams, the kind of silence that hides unspeakable things, and the kind of darkness that swallows more than just light. Sarah Miller had seen the playground hundreds of times. It was a fixture of her hometown, Willow Creek, a small, unremarkable town nestled in the shadow of the Appalachians. Every night on her drive home from the late shift at the diner, her headlights would sweep across the familiar expanse of Willow Creek Park. The carousel, the sandbox, the bright yellow slide. Usually a blur of color in her peripheral vision, a comforting, mundane landmark marking the final stretch of her long day. But tonight something was different. It was almost 2 a.m. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp earth. A sliver of moon hung low, casting long skeletal shadows from the oak trees that ringed the park. Sarah, a creature of habit and careful observation, felt it before she saw it. A prickle on the back of her neck, a subtle shift in the otherwise monotonous rhythm of her routine. Her old sedan, a trusty Honda Civic named Betsy, hummed along Elm Street, the only sound breaking the stillness of the sleeping town. And then there it was. Not a grand revelation, not a sudden shock, but a creeping, insidious wrongness. As Betsy's headlights illuminated the park entrance, Sarah noticed the swing set. 2 swings side by side, usually still at this hour, were moving. Not swaying gently with the breeze, but arcing with a deliberate, almost rhythmic motion. A slow, heavy push and pull, as if someone had just gotten off them, or more chillingly, as if someone was still on them, completely invisible in the gloom. Sarah instinctively slowed the car, her foot hovering over the brake. Her mind, usually sharp and logical, scrambled for an explanation. When? No, the air was too still for that kind of sustained motion. A prank? Teenagers, perhaps, having snuck out for a late-night thrill? It was possible, but the swings moved with such an unusual, almost mournful cadence. Too slow for a joyride, too steady for a random gust. Felt deliberate. A wave of unease washed over her. Willow Creek wasn't known for anything more exciting than the annual Apple Festival. Its biggest crime statistic was usually a stolen garden gnome. This felt different. She pulled Betsy over to the curb, the engine idling softly, a stark contrast to the sudden, profound silence that descended the moment she cut the headlights. The only light now came from the distant glow of a single street lamp at the far end of the park, barely piercing the inky blackness that clung to the playground equipment. Her heart began to thrum an anxious rhythm against her ribs. She told herself it was silly, just an overactive imagination fueled by exhaustion. But the swings continued their slow, silent dance, 2 dark silhouettes against the faint moonlight. They seemed to be calling to her, a silent beckoning into the darkness. Against her better judgment, against every instinct that screamed drive away, Sarah found herself reaching for the door handle. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pushed it open. The cool night air hit her face, sharp and invigorating, yet somehow heavy with an unspoken presence. She stepped out, pulling her worn denim jacket tighter around her, the gravel crunching softly under her sneakers. "Hello," she called out, her voice barely a whisper, swallowed immediately by the vast quiet. Felt foolish talking to an empty park, but the swings kept moving. She walked slowly, cautiously towards the playground. Each step felt amplified, her own breathing suddenly loud in her ears. The shadows lengthened and distorted as she moved, turning familiar shapes into monstrous specters. The slide became a gaping maw, the monkey bars a skeletal cage, and the swings, they were still moving. She could see them more clearly now, their chains glinting faintly. They were empty, truly empty, yet they swung. As she got closer, close enough to discern the individual links of the chain, she noticed something else. Something lying on the wood chips directly beneath one of the still-moving swings. It was small, brightly colored, and utterly out of place. Her breath hitched. It was a child's red sneaker. Not just any sneaker, but a tiny one, probably for a toddler. It lay on its side, laces untied, its pristine red canvas a shocking splash of color against the dark mulch. A cold dread began to seep into her bones. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't the wind. This was a sign. A forgotten shoe, a pair of still-moving swings, and an overwhelming, suffocating silence that felt less like peace and more like a held breath. Sarah's eyes scanned the surrounding darkness, searching for any other sign, any explanation, any other human presence. But there was nothing. Only the chilling rhythmic creak of the empty swings, and the single tiny red sneaker waiting. It was then, as she stood alone in the heart of the empty playground, that she heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible sound, like a whisper carried on a non-existent breeze. A child's giggle. And it wasn't coming from the park. It was coming from inside her car. Emily froze, her heart seizing in her chest like a fist clenching around ice. The world around her, which minutes ago had felt merely desolate, now became an active participant in her terror. The wind, which wasn't there, seemed to carry a chill that cut deeper than any winter air. The silence, previously a canvas for her thoughts, now pressed in, amplifying the impossible sound. A child's giggle. From inside her car. Her car, 20 feet away, sat squat and dark beneath the single flickering street lamp at the edge of the park. Its windows, she was certain, had been rolled up tight. Its doors, she was absolutely certain, had been locked. She'd heard the familiar click of the central locking system as she walked away. A habit born of city living and a subconscious need for security. For a long, agonizing moment, Emily didn't move. Her mind, usually so sharp, spun in a frantic, disbelieving loop. No. Impossible. I'm tired. It's late. My imagination is playing tricks on me. But the sound hadn't been a trick of the wind or a distant echo. It had been distinct, light, playful, and undeniably, unnervingly close. It had been inside her car. She slowly, cautiously, turned her head towards the vehicle. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, strained against the gloom. The car looked exactly as she'd left it. An ordinary silver sedan, unremarkable in every way, except for the terrifying secret it now seemed to hold. She scanned the back seat, the front passenger seat, the dark dashboard. Nothing. No movement. No shadowy figure. Just the inert metallic shell. Another beat of silence stretched, taut and suffocating. Emily held her breath, listening so intently that the blood rushing in her ears sounded like a roaring ocean. She waited for it to happen again, to confirm her sanity, or to shatter it completely. And then it did. So faint, so fleeting, it was almost like a memory of a sound, rather than a sound itself. A soft, almost whispered heat, higher pitched this time and undeniably, absolutely, coming from within the sealed confines of her vehicle. It wasn't menacing, not overtly. It was simply playful. And that was what made it so horrifying. The innocence of the sound, juxtaposed with the impossible context, twisted her gut into knots. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through her initial disbelief. This wasn't her imagination. This was real. Or at least something was real. Her legs, stiff and reluctant, began to move. One step, then another towards the car. Each footfall on the gravel path sounded deafening in the profound stillness of the night. Her eyes never left the car, searching, scrutinizing every dark curve, every reflective surface. She moved like a sleepwalker, drawn by an invisible, irresistible force. As she drew closer, the street lamp above her flickered again, plunging the car into momentary darkness before sputtering back to life. In that brief blackout, Emily swore she saw a faint, ephemeral glow from inside the car, like the brief luminescence of a firefly, gone before her brain could register it properly. Was it a reflection? A trick of light? Or something else entirely? She stopped a few feet from the driver's side door, her hand instinctively reaching for her phone in her pocket, not to call for help. Who would she even call? But for the small, reassuring beam of its flashlight. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it out, fumbling with the button. The beam cut through the darkness, a thin, wavering line of artificial daylight. She swept the light across the car's interior. The back seat, empty. The front passenger seat, empty. The dashboard pristine. Her eyes darted to the floorboards under the seats. Nothing. Just the familiar clutter of her everyday life. A forgotten coffee cup, a crumpled map, an old gym bag. No child. No toy. No person. Her breath hitched. Had the sound come from her mind after all? Was she finally losing it? The stress of her job, the isolation of her life, was it all catching up to her in the most terrifying way imaginable? She leaned in closer to the driver's side window, cupping her hands around her eyes to block out the reflections, pressing her face against the cool glass. She peered into the inky blackness beyond the driver's seat, towards the rear of the car. Still nothing. Then she noticed it. On the back window, barely visible, as if drawn with an invisible finger on frosted glass, was a small, perfectly formed handprint. It wasn't smudged with dirt or grime. It was too pristine, too perfect, and it wasn't on the outside of the glass. It was on the inside. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Her blood ran cold. The air around her seemed to thicken, pressing in, stealing the oxygen from her lungs. She stared at the print, a tiny spectral mark against the dark glass, a physical manifestation of the impossible giggle. Her mind screamed in protest, trying to find a rational explanation. Asterisk condensation? No, it's not cold enough for that. A prank? But how? The car was locked. Asterisk. She took a shaky step back, her eyes still glued to the handprint. It was too small to be an adult's. It was the size of a child's hand, a very young child's hand. And then, just as her mind began to spiral into a vortex of fear and disbelief, she heard it again. Not a giggle this time. A soft, almost imperceptible thump. It came from the back of the car, from the trunk. Her flashlight beam, now trembling uncontrollably in her hand, swung wildly towards the rear of the car. The trunk. The thought alone was enough to send a fresh wave of panic through her. What could possibly be in her trunk? She used it for groceries, for her gym bag, for supplies for her occasional weekend hikes. Nothing that could make a sound. Certainly nothing that could make a thump as if something had shifted or moved. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to run, to get back in the car, if she could even bring herself to open the door and drive away from this place, away from this nightmare. But a morbid curiosity, a desperate need to understand the impossible, rooted her to the spot. She couldn't leave. Not yet. Not without knowing. With agonizing slowness, Emily walked around the side of the car, her gaze fixed on the trunk. The silver paint gleamed eerily under the distant street lamp. She could see the faint outline of the trunk lock, a small dark circle. She reached it, her hand hovering just inches from the metallic surface. Her fingers brushed against the cold metal. Her heart pounded so violently it felt like it would burst through her ribs. She could feel the tremor in her own hand, a testament to the primal fear that now gripped her. She tried to rationalize. Maybe a stray animal had gotten in somehow? A cat, a raccoon? But the trunk was sealed. And the giggle? Animals don't giggle. And the handprint? She took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to steady herself. Her eyes darted around the empty playground. The swing set stood like gallows in the moonlight. The slide, a dark ramp leading to nowhere. The entire scene was a stage set for a horror film, and she was the unwitting star. She knew with a terrifying certainty that whatever was happening, it was not normal, it was not rational, and it was happening to her. Her thumb, numb with fear, pressed the small button beneath the trunk's lip. She expected resistance, a stubborn refusal to open, or perhaps the familiar whir of the mechanism. Instead, with a soft, almost oiled hiss, the trunk latch disengaged. The trunk lid, like a silent, waiting mouth, slowly, almost deliberately, began to rise on its own. Emily gasped, stumbling back a step. The rising lid revealed only darkness within, a deeper black than the surrounding night. No light from the street lamp penetrated its depths. It was like looking into an abyss. A wave of cold air seemed to rush out from the trunk, carrying with it a faint sweet smell. Something floral like lilies, but with an underlying sour note that made her stomach churn. It was the smell of something old, something forgotten. Her flashlight beam, still clutched in her trembling hand, finally found its target, piercing the inky blackness of the trunk. It revealed a jumble of her usual items, her emergency kit, a blanket, an old pair of hiking boots. But then the beam settled on something else. Something new. Something that should absolutely not have been there. Nestled amongst her supplies, lying on its side, was a small, worn, dusty teddy bear. Its fur was matted, one button eye missing, the other staring blankly up at her. It looked old, very old, like something that had been loved fiercely and then abandoned for decades. It was the kind of toy you might find in an antique shop or a forgotten attic. And then, as she stared at the teddy bear, its single button eye seeming to bore into her, she heard it again. This time it wasn't a giggle. It was a faint, almost inaudible whisper, seemingly coming from the teddy bear itself. A child's voice. Small. Distant. Hello. "Hello." The single word breathed into the suffocating silence didn't just echo in Jessica's ears. It vibrated through her bones, a cold, insidious tremor. Her breath hitched, caught somewhere between a gasp and a choked cry. Her brain, usually a fortress of logic and reason, sputtered, trying desperately to process the impossible. A teddy bear. A worn, inanimate object whispering a greeting. No, it couldn't be. Her mind, in a frantic scramble to reassert control, began to offer explanations, each more flimsy than the last. The wind? A trick of the acoustics? A distant sound carried on the night air, twisted by her own frayed nerves? Yet the whisper had been so distinct, so localized, seemingly emanating directly from the matted fur and the vacant button eye of the bear. It was a child's voice, small and fragile, imbued with an unnerving politeness that felt utterly out of place in the desolate pre-dawn gloom. Jessica took a shaky step back, then another, her gaze locked on the bear. It sat there unmoving, an innocent relic of childhood abandoned to the elements. But now it wasn't innocent. It was a silent sentinel, a tiny furry harbinger of something deeply unsettling. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to turn, to run, to sprint back to her car and never look back. To dismiss it as an overactive imagination, a byproduct of stress and sleep deprivation. But something held her. A morbid curiosity, a stubborn refusal to accept the inexplicable, or perhaps a deeper, more primal instinct, urging her to understand the source of the anomaly. She was a journalist, after all. Her professional life was built on uncovering truths, no matter how uncomfortable, even if the truth here seemed to defy all known laws of physics. Slowly, reluctantly, she took a step forward, then another, drawn back to the teddy bear like a moth to a flickering, dangerous flame. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the otherwise profound stillness. She knelt again, her knees protesting against the damp ground, her eyes scrutinizing the bear with an intensity born of fear and desperate inquiry. It was a standard, light brown teddy bear, perhaps a foot tall, its once plush fur now flattened and discolored in places. One button eye was missing, leaving a dark, empty socket that seemed to stare into nothingness, or perhaps everything. The other eye, a dull black disc, seemed to hold a peculiar glint under the faint moonlight, almost like a knowing gaze. She ran a trembling finger over its matted head, then down its arm. No wires, no hidden compartments she could immediately discern, no faint glow of a battery indicator, nothing that suggested it was anything other than a forgotten toy. Yet the whisper. She leaned closer, her ear almost brushing against its chest. Nothing. Only the faint, musty smell of damp fabric and old dust. She straightened up, a frustrated sigh escaping her lips. Had she imagined it? Had the silence of the playground, combined with the chilling story of Emily's disappearance, finally caused her mind to crack? Just as she was about to dismiss it, to rationalize it as a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and the eerie atmosphere, her gaze fell upon something tucked into the bear's faded bow, a small, almost microscopic detail. It was a tiny, intricate stitch, a single thread of vibrant, almost luminous blue, woven into the fabric of the bow itself. It stood out against the dull, faded red of the ribbon, a stark, almost unnatural contrast. It was so small, so easily missed, yet it snagged at her memory. She frowned, trying to place it. Why did a tiny blue stitch feel so significant? Then it hit her. A flash of a memory, an image from a missing persons poster, plastered on the lampposts of Fairview, just a few blocks from here. Emily Thompson, the missing girl. She remembered a detail, something that had struck her as poignant at the time. Emily's favorite sweater, a hand-knitted sky-blue cardigan made by her grandmother, known for its unique, almost iridescent blue yarn. The poster had mentioned it, saying she was last seen wearing it, a cruel irony that such a distinctive item of clothing had yielded no clues. Could it be? Could this tiny blue thread, so out of place on an old red bough, be a single strand of that very yarn? It seemed far-fetched, an almost unbelievable coincidence. But in this playground after midnight, with a whispering teddy bear, the line between coincidence and chilling reality felt incredibly thin. A shiver, deeper and colder than before, snaked its way down her spine. This wasn't just a randomly discarded toy. This bear felt connected. It felt like a piece of the puzzle that had haunted Fairview for months. She carefully, gingerly, picked up the teddy bear. It felt surprisingly heavy in her hands, not with the weight of an object, but with the unseen burden of untold secrets. Its single button eye seemed to track her movements, and for a terrifying second, she felt a subtle shift in its stuffing, as if it were adjusting, settling in her grip. "Hello," she whispered back, her voice barely a breath, testing the silence. Nothing. Only the vast, oppressive quiet of the deserted playground. She turned slowly, scanning the expanse of swings, slides, and monkey bars. The moonlight, now higher in the sky, cast long, distorted shadows that danced like specters with every gentle sway of the unseen breeze. The metal poles of the swing set glinted like skeletal fingers, and the slide, a gaping maw, seemed to invite her into its darkness. Every creak, every rustle of dry leaves, every distant chirp of a night insect, was amplified, distorted, turning the familiar playground into a landscape of lurking threats. Her gaze drifted to the small, wooden bench near the edge of the sandpit. It was where Emily's mother, Sarah Thompson, had reportedly sat for hours in the days following her daughter's disappearance, a silent vigil, hoping for a miracle that never came. Jessica remembered the news reports, the town's collective grief, the frantic search parties combing every inch of the surrounding woods. But nothing. No trace of Emily, only the lingering question mark that hung heavy over Fairview. And now this teddy bear. This whispering bear with its tiny blue thread. A new thought, chilling in its implications, began to form in her mind. What if the whisper wasn't a trick? What if it wasn't a prank? What if it was something else? Something reaching out? The idea was ludicrous, supernatural. Yet it held a terrifying grip on her imagination. As if responding to her internal turmoil, a faint, almost imperceptible sound broke the silence. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the distant hum of the city. It was a soft, rhythmic thump, thump, thump. It was coming from the direction of the swing set. Jessica's head snapped towards the sound. One of the swings, the smallest one, designed for toddlers, was swaying gently. Not wildly, as if pushed by a strong gust, but with a slow, deliberate rhythm, as if someone had just gotten off it. The seat, a faded plastic rectangle, swung back and forth, thump, 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 tapping softly against the metal frame with each arc. She hadn't seen it move before. It had been still as the rest of the playground. Had she just missed it? Or had it just started moving? Her grip on the teddy bear tightened, its matted fur feeling strangely warm against her cold fingers. The single button eye seemed to gleam, reflecting the swinging motion of the toddler swing. She took a hesitant step towards it, the bear clutched protectively to her chest. The thump, thump, thump continued, a spectral lullaby in the dead of night. As she got closer, she noticed something else. Something on the ground, directly beneath the arc of the swinging seat. It was small, dark, and partially obscured by the shadows. Her heart pounded, a frantic drum against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and flee. This was too much. The bear, the whisper, the blue thread, the swinging seat. It was all coalescing into a nightmare she couldn't wake from. But the journalist in her, the relentless seeker of truth, propelled her forward. She had to see. She had to know. She reached the swing set, her eyes fixed on the small object on the ground. She knelt again, the teddy bear still clutched in her hand, and reached out, her fingers brushing against the cold, damp earth. Her fingers closed around the object. It was small, smooth, and distinctly familiar. She pulled it into the meager moonlight, her eyes widening in horror and disbelief. It was a small plastic hair clip, shaped like a tiny blue butterfly, the exact kind Emily Thompson was known to wear. The kind her mother had described in agonizing detail during the televised appeals. The kind that had vanished with her, leaving no trace. And as she stared at the little blue butterfly clip, nestled in her trembling palm, she heard it again. Not a whisper this time, not a giggle, but a distinct, clear sound, seemingly coming from the very air around her. A child's voice, close, directly beside her ear. "You found it." Jessica froze, every muscle in her body locked, a cold, paralyzing fear seizing her. Her breath hitched, trapped in her throat. The words, "You found it," vibrated not just in her ears, but seemingly within her skull, as if the sound had bypassed the air entirely and resonated directly against her brain. It was a child's voice, yes, but not sweet or innocent. There was an unnerving flatness to it, a lack of human warmth that chilled her to the bone. She didn't dare to move, didn't dare to breathe. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, scanned the inky blackness around her, desperately searching for a source, a shape, anything that could explain the impossible. But there was nothing. Just the skeletal outlines of the playground equipment, looming like silent sentinels under the faint, distant glow of the streetlights. The swings hung motionless. The slide, a silver streak in the darkness, was empty. The sandbox, a vast, dark rectangle, held no secrets. The air itself felt heavy, thick with an unseen presence, pressing down on her, suffocating her. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the terrifying silence. Her fingers, still clutching the small, pink butterfly clip, trembled violently. The plastic felt strangely warm against her cold skin, an odd sensation that made her skin crawl. She squeezed her eyes shut for a fleeting moment, a desperate attempt to reset, to convince herself that this was a trick of the mind, a phantom echo of the wind. But when she opened them again, the oppressive silence remained, unbroken by anything but the ragged sound of her own breathing. Then it came again. A whisper, this time soft as the rustle of leaves, yet cutting through the silence with an icy precision. "Don't drop it." The words weren't accusatory, nor were they playful. They were simply stated with that same unsettling flat quality. Jessica's gaze dropped to the butterfly clip in her hand. It was just a child's hair accessory, a simple piece of plastic. Yet, in this moment, it felt like a conduit, a tether to whatever unseen entity lurked beside her. What did it want with the clip? What did it want with her? A jolt of adrenaline, sharp and acrid, coursed through her veins. Her instinct screamed at her to run, to bolt from this place and never look back, to forget the legend, forget the missing children, forget the creeping dread that had drawn her here. But her feet, inexplicably, refused to obey. It was as if an invisible force had rooted her to the spot, holding her captive in the heart of the empty playground. A morbid curiosity, a terrifying compulsion, warred with her primal fear. She had to know. She had to understand. Who are you?" she managed to croak, her voice a thin, reedy sound that seemed to disappear into the vastness of the park. It felt foolish, speaking to the empty air. But the alternative silence was even more terrifying. A soft, almost imperceptible sigh brushed past her ear, like a wisp of cold air. It wasn't a breath. It was something else, something formless and chilling. Then the child's voice, startlingly clear once more, though still devoid of emotion. "We're playing. We." The word hung in the air, a chilling revelation. Not one child. Children. A cold dread seeped into every cell of her body. The stories flashed through her mind. The whispers of children disappearing from this very park, the urban legends of lingering spirits. She had dismissed them as folklore, as cautionary tales. Now, standing here, clutching a child's forgotten hair clip, they felt terrifyingly real. Her eyes darted around again, more frantically this time. If there were multiple presences, where were they? Was she surrounded? She strained her ears, listening for any telltale creak of a swing, any rustle in the bushes, any faint sound that would betray their location. But there was nothing. Only the distant, muffled hum of the city, a stark contrast to the absolute, suffocating silence of the playground itself. A sudden sharp chill enveloped her, far colder than the night air. It felt like an invisible hand had wrapped around her, its icy grip pressing down on her shoulders. Her teeth began to chatter, an uncontrollable tremor shaking her entire body. She could feel a heavy, watchful gaze upon her, not from one direction, but from everywhere at once. It was an all-encompassing presence, a suffocating awareness that she was no longer alone, that she had stumbled into something far beyond her comprehension. "What are you playing?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, forcing the words past the lump of fear in her throat. Her mind raced, desperate for logic, for an explanation. Was this some elaborate prank by local teenagers? No, the voice was too distinct, too close, too otherworldly. A faint giggle, high-pitched and ethereal, seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath her feet. It was not a joyful sound. It was devoid of mirth, a hollow echo that promised only unease. Then the voice spoke again, directly in front of her now, though she still saw nothing. "Hide and seek." Jessica's blood ran cold. Hide and seek. A child's game. But in this context, after midnight, in an empty park with unseen entities, it was nothing short of a nightmare. The implications were chilling. Were they hiding from her? Or were they inviting her to hide with them? The last thought sent a shiver of pure terror down her spine. The missing children. Had they been invited to play this very game? She took a hesitant step backward, her gaze still fixed on the empty space where the voice seemed to be. Her foot crunched on a stray pebble, the sound shockingly loud in the profound silence. As if in response, a low guttural whisper slithered past her ear. "Don't try to leave." That was it. The warning, the threat. Her rational mind, however flimsy it had become, finally shattered. This was real. This was dangerous. This was beyond anything she had ever encountered. The air crackled with a malevolent energy, a palpable shift from mere unease to active hostility. The playground, which had felt merely abandoned moments ago, now felt predatory, a trap sprung around her. Her eyes fell on the swing set again. One of the swings, the one closest to the large oak tree, gave a gentle, almost imperceptible sway. There was no wind. Not a breath of air stirred the leaves on the branches above. Yet the swing moved a slow, deliberate arc as if recently vacated. An icy knot tightened in Jessica's stomach. Had something just been sitting there? Was she truly surrounded by these invisible players? She gripped the butterfly clip tighter, its warmth now feeling less comforting and more like a brand. It felt heavy, imbued with a strange, dark significance she couldn't yet fathom. A faint, almost transparent shimmer caught her eye at the very edge of her peripheral vision, near the base of the slide. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, like a ripple in the fabric of the night. But she saw it. She knew she saw it. "Why me?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "What do you want?" The child's voice, now sounding slightly further away, as if it had moved to the base of the slide itself, responded with an unsettling simplicity. "You found it. You're part of the game now." Jessica stared at the pink butterfly clip in her hand. It was the key. Finding it had not been a simple act of discovery, it had been an initiation. She had unknowingly accepted an invitation to a game she didn't understand, with players she couldn't see, and stakes she couldn't comprehend. Her mind raced, desperately trying to connect the dots. The missing children, the legends, the strange incidents in town. Had they all found something? Had they all been drawn into this sinister game? A chilling thought pierced through her panic. If she was playing hide and seek, and they were the ones hiding, what happened when you found them? Or more terrifyingly, what happened if they found you? The silence that followed was deafening, pregnant with unspoken threats. The playground seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Jessica felt a cold, unseen presence trace a path up her arm, sending shivers through her entire body. It was a sensation of light, feathery touch, like a child's fingers, yet utterly devoid of warmth. She knew with a certainty that chilled her to the core, that she couldn't simply walk away. Not now. The game had begun, and she was irrevocably a player. The thought of running, of escaping, was quickly replaced by a desperate, gnawing need to understand what this game was, what the children wanted, and how she could possibly survive it. She looked at the empty swings, the silent slide, the dark sandbox. This wasn't just a playground anymore. It was a hunting ground, and she was the prey, or perhaps the next player to disappear. A cold gust of wind, seemingly from nowhere, swept through the park, rustling the leaves with a sound like a collective sigh. In that brief moment, amidst the whispers of the wind, she heard it again. Not the child's voice this time, but a cacophony of faint, almost inaudible giggles rising and falling, surrounding her from all directions. They were everywhere, and they were waiting. The faint, almost inaudible giggles rising and falling, surrounding her from all directions, were everywhere, and they were waiting. Emily froze, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The cold night air, already sharp, seemed to bite deeper, seeping into her bones. She spun in a slow circle, the beam of her flashlight cutting through the inky blackness, sweeping across the empty swings, the silent slide, the vacant jungle gym. Nothing. Absolutely nothing but the playground equipment, stark and still under the distant streetlights. Yet the sound persisted, a playful, taunting chorus that seemed to emanate from the very air itself. It was no longer a child's desperate cry for help. This was something else entirely, something far more unsettling. A shiver, colder than any wind, traced a path down her spine. Her mind, usually so logical, so grounded in the tangible, struggled to process what she was hearing. Was it an echo? A trick of the wind? Her own overactive imagination? Fueled by exhaustion and fear? She tried to rationalize, to find a scientific explanation for the impossible. Perhaps the acoustics of the park were playing tricks on her, creating illusions of sound. But the giggles were too distinct, too localized. shifting from one direction to another with an almost mischievous intent. She clenched her jaw, her knuckles white around the flashlight. "Hello," she called out, her voice barely a whisper, swallowed by the vast silence that followed her own utterance. The giggles ceased for a brief, agonizing moment, replaced by a suffocating quiet that felt heavier, more menacing than the sound itself. Then they erupted again, louder this time, coalescing around the cluster of swings. Emily's beam shot towards them. The 4 swings, suspended from their rusted chains, began to sway. Not gently, not with the languid motion of a breeze, but with a rhythmic, deliberate push and pull, as if invisible children had just propelled themselves into the air and then, at the peak of their arc, leapt off, leaving the seats to swing wildly in their wake. The chains creaked, a mournful metallic protest against the unseen force. One swing, a tiny infant seat, rocked back and forth with particular vigor, its empty harness facing her, almost beckoning. Her breath hitched. This wasn't the wind. The air was still, save for the faint rustle of leaves in the distant trees. She felt a primal urge to turn and run, to flee this place that defied all reason, all sanity. But a strange, almost hypnotic curiosity, a desperate need to understand, held her rooted to the spot. Her gaze drifted from the swings to the towering slide, its plastic surface gleaming faintly under her light. As she watched, a small childlike imprint, like a ghostly handprint, seemed to materialize on the dusty surface of the slide, lingering for a moment before slowly, eerily fading away. Emily squeezed her eyes shut, then opened them again, willing herself to see only the normal, mundane reality of an empty playground. But the images persisted in her mind, vivid and terrifying. Her heart throbbed in her ears, a frantic drumbeat urging her to flee. She took a tentative step backward, then another, her eyes darting around, searching for a clear path to escape. As she moved, the giggles began to morph. They lost their playful edge, becoming something softer, more insidious. They transitioned into faint, whispered fragments of what sounded like a child's rhyme. "Ring around the rosy pockets full of posy." The words were barely discernible, carried on an unseen breath that seemed to brush against her ear, then her cheek, then the nape of her neck. The whispers encircled her, a chorus of spectral voices, each one closer than the last, until it felt as though unseen children were dancing around her, their tiny cold fingers just grazing her clothes. "Ashes, ashes, we all fall down." The final line was delivered with a chilling, drawn-out sigh, and then a profound, heavy silence descended once more. This silence was different from the last. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was a presence, thick and suffocating, pressing down on her, stealing the air from her lungs. The playful mischief was gone, replaced by an oppressive sense of sorrow and something far more sinister. In the sudden, absolute quiet, a strange compulsion took hold of her. It was a feeling she couldn't explain. A magnetic pull towards the base of the slide where she had just seen the ghostly handprint. Her legs, seemingly of their own accord, carried her forward, her flashlight beam cutting a narrow tunnel through the oppressive darkness. She knelt, her knees sinking slightly into the soft, damp wood chips that cushioned the ground around the playground equipment. Her fingers, trembling slightly, sifted through the chips, guided by an invisible force. Then she felt it. Cold, hard metal. She pulled it out, her breath catching in her throat. It was a small, tarnished silver locket, no bigger than her thumb. It was old, its surface scratched and dull, but the intricate floral engraving on its face was still visible. It felt impossibly heavy in her hand, as if it carried the weight of years of untold stories. With a surge of adrenaline, Emily fumbled with the clasp. It was stiff, resistant, as if it didn't want to be opened. Finally, with a soft click, it sprang open. Inside, nestled beneath a thin, yellowed plastic cover, was a faded photograph. It was a picture of a young girl, no older than 6 or 7, with bright, innocent eyes and a shy, tentative smile. Her hair was styled in 2 neat pigtails, framing a face that was both sweet and profoundly sad. Emily felt an immediate, inexplicable pang of grief, as if she knew this child, as if she had been searching for her all along. Her thumb instinctively traced the outline of the girl's face in the photograph. Then she noticed something else. Etched faintly on the back of the locket, almost worn away by time and handling, were 3 words: Sarah 1987. The moment she read the inscription, the oppressive silence shattered. Not with giggles, not with whispers, but with a sudden bone-chilling drop in temperature that made her teeth chatter uncontrollably. The air around her turned icy, an unnatural cold that seeped through her clothes, through her skin into her very marrow. A gust of wind, though no trees swayed, whipped through the playground, stirring the wood chips around her, sending a cascade of dried leaves skittering across the ground. Then she felt it. A cold, tiny hand, impossibly small and icy, brushed against her ankle. It wasn't a hallucination, not a trick of the mind. It was a distinct, undeniable touch. She gasped, a choked sound of pure terror, and dropped the locket. It fell into the wood chips with a soft thud, its open halves revealing the faded photograph of Sarah. Scrambling backward, her eyes wide with a terror she had never known, Emily fumbled for her flashlight, which had clattered to the ground. As she desperately tried to reorient the beam, she caught a fleeting glimpse of something. A small, translucent figure, no taller than a toddler, darting behind the jungle gym. It was barely visible, a shimmering distortion in the air, but it was undeniably there. A childlike form, ethereal and terrifying. Before she could even process what she had seen, a clear, mournful whisper, devoid of any playfulness, devoid of any desperation, spoke directly into her ear. It was so close, so intimate, it felt as though someone was breathing right on her skin. "She's waiting for you." The words were like a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. Emily scrambled to her feet, her legs unsteady, threatening to buckle beneath her. The locket lay forgotten in the wood chips, its open face staring up at the moonless sky. She had found Sarah, yes, but not in the way she had imagined. Sarah wasn't lost, she was here. And she wasn't alone. "She's waiting for you," echoed in her mind. A chilling pronouncement that transformed the entire playground from a place of innocent play into a spectral prison. The realization hit her with the force of a tidal wave. This wasn't just about a lost child anymore. This was about something far deeper, far more ancient and malevolent. The locket, the name, the date. They were not just clues. They were an invitation, a key to a world she was never meant to enter. The children, the giggles, the whispers, they weren't just trying to get her attention. They were trying to keep her. Panic, raw and absolute, seized her. The urge to flee became an overwhelming imperative. She turned and bolted, her feet pounding against the wood chips. Then the grass, then the cracked asphalt path. She didn't look back. Her only thought was escape, to put as much distance as possible between herself and this cursed place. The gate, the entrance she had so casually walked through just an hour ago, seemed impossibly far away, an elusive beacon in the suffocating darkness. The trees lining the perimeter of the park loomed larger, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out to ensnare her. She ran, her lungs burning, her muscles screaming in protest. Each step felt like wading through thick mud, as if an invisible force was dragging her back, resisting her every effort to break free. The giggle started again, fainter this time, but still there, trailing her. A chorus of spectral laughter that seemed to mock her futile attempt at escape. "Don't leave us, Emily," they seemed to whisper. "We just want to play." Finally, gasping for breath, she reached the edge of the playground, the boundary between the haunted park and the relative safety of the outside world. Her hand reached out, grabbing the cold metal of the fence, her fingers fumbling for the latch. She pushed it open, a wave of relief washing over her, even as her body screamed in protest. She burst through, stumbling onto the sidewalk, her chest heaving. She didn't stop, didn't dare to look back. But as she took one last, desperate stride away from the park, a voice clearer and more distinct than any she had heard before, a child's voice, no longer calling for help, but filled with a chilling, possessive joy, whispered right behind her. "Don't leave us, Emily. We just want to play." She froze, her blood turning to ice. Slowly, agonizingly, she turned her head, her eyes drawn back to the empty playground. And there, from the depths of the darkness, from behind the swings, from beneath the slide, from every conceivable shadow, a multitude of glowing childlike eyes watched her. They were everywhere, tiny pinpricks of light in the overwhelming blackness, silent and unblinking. And in her hand, impossibly heavy, a burden she could not shake, was the tarnished silver locket, its faded photograph of Sarah a chilling reminder that she had not escaped. Not really. The tarnished silver locket, its faded photograph of Sarah a chilling reminder that she had not escaped. Not really. Jessica's fingers clenched around the cold metal, a visceral revulsion seizing her. Felt wrong, utterly wrong in her hand, a relic of a nightmare she had desperately tried to bury, now resurrected and pressed into her palm with an impossible weight. She felt a phantom chill spread from the locket, up her arm, and into her very core, as if the darkness itself had seeped into the metal and was now flowing into her. Her breath hitched, catching in her throat, a ragged, desperate sound in the suffocating silence of the playground. The swing set, still swaying almost imperceptibly, seemed to mock her, its empty seats a gaping maw of absence. She stared at the locket, then at the vast, featureless expanse of the playground, the skeletal trees, the encroaching shadows. There was no one. Nothing. Just her, the locket, and the pervasive heavy dread. A primal urge to throw it, to hurl the accursed thing into the darkest corner of the park, to bury it deep beneath the cold earth, surged through her. She lifted her arm, intent on release, on severing this horrific connection, but her muscles locked. Her hand refused to obey. It was as if the locket had fused with her flesh, an extension of her own despair. A shiver, colder than any midnight breeze, traced a path down her spine. No, she couldn't. It wouldn't let her. It was a part of her now, a physical manifestation of the unresolved terror that had shadowed her for years. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at her throat. She had to get out. Away from the playground, away from the echoes of Sarah's laughter, away from the silent, unblinking eyes that she still felt watching her from the periphery of her vision. Her feet, numb and heavy, finally found purchase, stumbling backward, then turning a desperate, clumsy retreat. The locket remained clutched in her hand, a burning coal, a leaden weight, impossible to ignore. Each step she took away from the playground felt like pulling against an invisible tether, a resistance that deepened with every retreating stride. The familiar path back to her car, usually a comforting guide, now morphed into a winding labyrinth, each shadow a potential threat, each rustle of leaves a whispered warning. She fumbled for her car keys, her hands shaking so violently that the metal jingled a frantic, discordant tune. The silver locket, still in a death grip, seemed to pulse with a faint internal light, a trick of the exhausted mind, she told herself, but the sensation was undeniably real. Finally, the click of the car door unlocking was a small, fragile victory against the encroaching darkness. She practically fell into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut with a desperate finality, as if the thin metal and glass could truly shield her from what she had just experienced. But the locket was still there in her hand. She stared at it, her chest heaving, her breath catching in ragged gasps. The faded image of Sarah, smiling vibrant, before the world had stolen her light, stared back. A wave of profound grief, mixed with a sickening terror, washed over Jessica. This wasn't just a locket. It was a promise unkept, a life extinguished, a mystery unsolved. And now it was her burden. Driving home was a blur of streetlights and shadows. Her mind was a maelstrom of fear and confusion. Had she imagined it all? The eyes, the locket, the palpable presence of something sinister? But the locket was real, cold and heavy in her palm, a tangible anchor to the nightmare. She kept glancing at it, then back at the road, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Every shadow seemed to stretch and writhe. Every distant sound became a whisper, a call. The city, usually a source of comfort and familiarity, now felt alien, its lights a mocking imitation of safety. When she finally pulled into her driveway, the familiar silhouette of her house offered little solace. It felt like a flimsy cardboard cutout against the vast, menacing sky. She hurried inside, locking the door with 3 distinct clicks, a ritual of false security. The locket was still in her hand. She couldn't bring herself to put it down. She walked into the living room, the quiet hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the oppressive silence. Her gaze fell on the small, wooden box on her coffee table, a keepsake box where she kept trinkets and old letters. It felt like the only appropriate place for it, a place where it could be contained, hidden, perhaps even forgotten. With trembling fingers, she pried open the locket. The photograph of Sarah was even more faded up close, the edges brittle with age and wear. On the other side, usually reserved for another photo or a lock of hair, there was nothing. No, wait. Etched, almost imperceptibly, into the tarnished silver, were 2 tiny initials. E. Jessica frowned, her mind racing. E.T.? Who was E.T.? It wasn't Sarah's initials. It wasn't hers. It wasn't any of their close friends or family. A new thread, a new knot in the already tangled web of Sarah's disappearance. She traced the tiny letters with her thumb, a strange sense of unfamiliarity mixed with a faint, insistent thrumming in her memory. It was almost like she should know these initials but couldn't quite place them. The feeling was frustratingly elusive, a word on the tip of her tongue, a face just out of focus. She placed the locket carefully into the wooden box, closing the lid with a soft thud that echoed ominously in the quiet room. She told herself it was done. It was contained. But as she turned away, a chilling sensation crept over her. The room felt colder, the air thicker. A faint whisper, like dry leaves skittering across pavement, seemed to emanate from the box. She spun around, her heart hammering against her ribs, but the box sat innocently on the table, still and silent. Had she imagined it? Her nerves were frayed, her mind playing tricks. It had to be. She tried to distract herself. She made a cup of tea, the warmth of the mug a welcome comfort against the lingering chill in her bones. She sat on the couch, the mug clutched in both hands, staring blankly at the television. But her gaze kept drifting back to the wooden box. It seemed to draw her in, a silent magnetic pull. She felt a growing irrational certainty that the locket was not just an object. It was a key, a conduit, a living, breathing entity that had chosen her and would not let her go. The initials. A. She racked her brain, sifting through old memories, old classmates, old acquaintances. Nothing. The more she tried to force it, the further it receded, like a dream fading upon waking. Frustration mingled with the ever-present fear. This wasn't just a random discovery. It felt deliberate, a message from the past, specifically for her. As the hours crawled by, the silence of her home became unbearable. Every creak of the house, every distant siren, seemed to amplify the oppressive weight of the locket's presence. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was no longer alone. A subtle shift in the air, a fleeting shadow at the edge of her vision, a faint, almost imperceptible scent of damp earth and something sweet, like wilting flowers. Her eyes darted around the room, searching but finding nothing. Yet the feeling persisted, a cold, unwavering certainty that she was being watched, even within the supposed safety of her own home. She went to bed, but sleep was a distant luxury. Every time she closed her eyes, the image of the empty playground flashed behind her eyelids, followed by the unblinking eyes, and then always Sarah's faded smile from the locket. She tossed and turned, tangled in her sheets, sweat beading on her forehead despite the chill in the room. The locket, even hidden in the wooden box, seemed to radiate a silent hum, a low, persistent vibration that resonated deep within her bones. Around 3 in the morning, a soft scratching sound began. It was faint at first, barely audible, coming from the living room. Jessica froze, her breath caught in her throat. It sounded like fingernails dragging lightly across wood. Her heart pounded, a frantic drum against her ribs. She tried to rationalize it, the house settling, a branch scraping against a window, a mouse. But the sound was too deliberate, too rhythmic. Asterisk scratch. 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 Asterisk. It was coming from the coffee table, from the wooden box. Terror, raw and visceral, seized her. She wanted to scream, to run, to bury herself under the covers and pretend it wasn't happening. But a morbid curiosity, a desperate need to understand, compelled her. Slowly, agonizingly, she pushed back her covers. Her bare feet met the cold floor, sending a jolt through her. Each step towards the living room was a monumental effort, a battle against the overwhelming urge to flee. The scratching grew louder, more insistent, a maddening rhythm that seemed to synchronize with her own frantic heartbeat. When she reached the living room doorway, she stopped. The room was bathed in the faint, ghostly glow of the streetlights filtering through the curtains. And there, on the coffee table, the wooden box was indeed scratching. Not just the sound, but a visible, subtle tremor. The lid was slightly ajar, just a fraction of an inch, as if something inside was trying to force its way out. The scratching stopped abruptly. Jessica stared, her eyes wide with unadulterated horror. She could see nothing, yet she felt a presence, cold and ancient, emanating from the box. A whisper, clearer this time, seemed to slither from the slightly open lid. It wasn't a language she understood, but the intent was unmistakable. A promise, a threat, a chilling invitation. And then, as if on cue, the light in the room flickered once, twice, before plunging into complete darkness, leaving Jessica alone with the silent, open box and the chilling certainty that she was no longer just haunted by the past, but actively entangled in it. The locket had found its way back to her, and it had brought something else with it, something that had been waiting. The locket had found its way back to her, and it had brought something else with it, something that had been waiting. Emily's hands, still trembling, reached inside the box, pushing aside the crumbling velvet lining. Beneath it, nestled against the aged wood, was a thin rectangular object. Her fingers brushed against its surface, dry and rough, like ancient paper. With a gasp that caught in her throat, she pulled it out. It was a photograph. Sepia-toned, its edges crinkled and worn, as if it had been handled countless times, or perhaps hidden away for decades. The image itself was faded, but undeniably clear enough to send a fresh wave of icy dread through her. It was the playground. The same rusty swing set, the chipped paint on the slide, the familiar pattern of the monkey bars. And in the center of the frame, 3 children. A younger Emily, unmistakable with her bright, eager eyes and the faint crescent-shaped scar on her knee that she'd gotten falling off her bike that very summer. Beside her, Sarah, her arm linked through Emily's, a wide, gap-toothed grin on her face, clutching a worn-out teddy bear. And then the third child. A boy. He stood a little apart from them, just behind the swing set, partially obscured by its metal frame. He was slightly older than Emily and Sarah, perhaps 10 or 11. His clothes were simple, faded jeans and a plain t-shirt. His face, though slightly blurred by time and the photograph's age, was fixated on the camera, an intensity in his dark eyes that seemed to pierce through the sepia haze and into Emily's very soul. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't playing. He was simply watching. The blood drained from Emily's face. She didn't recognize him. Not immediately. But a faint, unsettling echo stirred in the deepest recesses of her memory. A shadow at the edge of her childhood games. A voice she couldn't quite place. A presence that had always felt other. Who was he? Why was he in this photograph with her and Sarah? And why did his gaze feel so accusatory, so knowing? She turned the photograph over, her fingers fumbling, expecting nothing. But there, scrawled on the back in faded, childish handwriting, were 2 words. A name. Ethan. And beneath it, a date or perhaps a command. Midnight. Last swing. Ethan. The name was a phantom, echoing in her mind. No Ethan had been part of their close-knit circle. No Ethan had lived on their street. She searched her memories, desperately trying to pull forth any scrap of information about a boy named Ethan from that summer. Nothing concrete surfaced, only a vague sense of unease, a feeling of being watched from afar, a whisper that Sarah had sometimes exchanged with someone Emily couldn't see. Midnight. Last swing. The words were a direct, chilling message. They didn't belong to a forgotten past. They belonged to the present. Someone had placed this box in her attic. Someone wanted her to find it. Someone wanted her to see this photograph. And someone wanted her to remember. The locket in her other hand felt heavy, cold. It wasn't just a sentimental piece of jewelry anymore. It was a key to unlocking a memory she had suppressed, a truth that had been buried under layers of grief and self-blame. The playground after midnight. That's where it had all begun. And now it seemed that's where it was all leading her back to. Her eyes darted around the dusty attic, suddenly feeling exposed, vulnerable. The silence, which had once been comforting, was now oppressive, filled with imagined whispers and the frantic pounding of her own heart. How had the box gotten here? The attic door was always locked, the key kept hidden. Had someone broken in? Or had someone familiar, someone with access, placed it there? The thought sent a fresh shiver down her spine. The latter was far more terrifying. She closed her eyes, trying to force her mind back to that summer. The long hot days. The endless games. The way Sarah's laugh used to echo through the trees. And then the growing shadow. The feeling that something was off. The argument she and Sarah had had, quiet and rare, about secrets. Had Sarah been keeping a secret about Ethan? Had Emily been intentionally excluded? She remembered a few times when Sarah would disappear for an hour, sometimes 2, claiming she was going to her grandmother's house, but returning with a strange light in her eyes, a kind of knowing look Emily couldn't decipher. Had she been meeting Ethan? And what did they talk about? What secrets did they share? The photograph felt like a physical weight in her hands, a tangible link to a past that refused to stay buried. The boy Ethan, his eyes piercing. He wasn't just a memory, he was a presence. A presence that had somehow orchestrated this, guiding her to this box, to this photograph, to this name, to this chilling message. She felt a desperate urge to call David, to tell him everything, to share the crushing burden of this new discovery. Or Michael, who had been so understanding that morning. But a strange, primal instinct held her back. This felt too personal, too deeply entwined with her own forgotten childhood. It was a thread she felt compelled to follow alone, at least for now. As if involving anyone else might somehow put them in danger, or break the fragile connection she now had to the truth. She stood there, the dust motes dancing in the faint light filtering through the attic window, the old photograph and the locket clutched tight in her hands. The silence of her house was now punctuated by the frantic beating of her own heart. The empty playground after midnight wasn't just a chilling memory. It was a destination, and someone or something was waiting for her there. Again, the cold steel of the handgun was a strange comfort against the clammy sweat on her palm. Emily took a deep, shuddering breath, the air thick with the scent of fear and the lingering phantom of her nightmare. The empty playground after midnight. It was no longer a chilling memory, but a command, a destination, a terrifying summons. And she knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that someone or something was indeed waiting for her there. Again, she moved through her house like a ghost, each step a deliberate effort against the instinct to bolt and hide. Her mind raced, piecing together the fragmented notes, the chilling dreams, the inexplicable pull she felt towards that desolate patch of land. David's last message, the cryptic warning, the missing children. It all converged on that one location. The answers, however terrifying, had to be there. She had to know. For David. For herself. For all the vanished souls. Slipping out the back door, she found herself plunged into the inky blackness of a moonless night. The familiar suburban street was transformed, shadows stretching long and distorted, every rustle of leaves in the overgrown hedges sounding like a whispered threat. The air was heavy, still, and unnaturally silent, save for the frantic pounding of her own heart. She clutched the handgun tighter, its presence a cold, hard anchor in a world that felt increasingly surreal. Each step towards the playground was a battle against her own primal terror. She scanned the darkened houses, the silent cars, convinced that eyes were watching her from unseen windows, from the depths of the shadowy trees. Was she being followed? Was this a trap? The thought was a cold knot in her stomach, tightening with every block she traversed. She imagined the figure from her dreams, the one with the obscured face, lurking just beyond the periphery of her vision, a silent sentinel guiding her to her fate. The streetlights, usually a comforting glow, seemed to dim as she approached the edge of the park, casting long dancing shadows that played tricks on her eyes. The familiar sign, faded and chipped, now seemed to leer at her. Maplewood Community Playground. Community. The irony was a bitter taste in her mouth. This place had taken more than it had given. Stepping onto the soft, woodchip-covered ground, the silence intensified. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was a profound, oppressive quiet that seemed to absorb all noise, even the distant hum of the city. The swings hung motionless, their chains glinting faintly in the scant moonlight, like skeletal arms suspended in the air. The slide, a twisted metal behemoth during the day, now resembled a gaping maw. The merry-go-round stood frozen, a silent, rusted carousel of forgotten joy. Emily slowly circled the perimeter, her senses on high alert. The air was colder here, tinged with a faint metallic scent she couldn't quite place. She felt an almost physical pressure, a heavy presence that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath her feet. This wasn't just an empty playground. It was a place imbued with a dark, lingering energy, a repository of fear and loss. She remembered David's notes, his frantic scribbles about patterns, about the old oak tree, about the hidden truth. Her gaze drifted to the ancient oak, its gnarled branches reaching out like grasping fingers against the night sky. She walked towards it, her boots crunching softly on the wood chips. As she approached, something caught her eye. Not directly on the tree, but near its base, partially obscured by a patch of overgrown weeds. It was a small, almost imperceptible disturbance in the ground, a section of the wood chips that seemed recently shifted, revealing a darker, damp patch of earth beneath. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Dropping to her knees, Emily carefully pushed aside the wood chips. Her fingers brushed against something hard, metallic, and cold. She dug faster, her nails tearing at the soil, until she uncovered a small, weathered wooden box, no bigger than a shoebox, half buried beneath the surface. It was crudely constructed, but sealed tight. This had to be it. This had to be what David was talking about. This was the hidden truth. With trembling hands, she pried open the lid. Inside, nestled amongst a layer of dried leaves and a small faded child's drawing of a stick figure holding hands with a larger stick figure, was a worn leather-bound journal. Its pages were thick with age, and the cover was embossed with a single, almost invisible initial, D. David's journal. A wave of relief, quickly followed by a fresh surge of dread, washed over her. She finally had something tangible, something real. This wasn't just a dream, a delusion. David had been here. He had hidden this. She pulled the journal out, the weight of it surprisingly heavy in her hands. The faint scent of old paper and something else, something metallic and earthy, clung to it. Her fingers traced the faded cover, her eyes scanning the first few pages. David's familiar, slightly messy handwriting filled the lines, but it was frantic, almost desperate. The first entry was dated weeks before his disappearance. Asterisk day 1. They don't believe me. No one believes me. But I see it. The pattern. It's here. In the playground. It's not just a coincidence, Emily. It can't be. Asterisk. Emily gasped, her breath catching in her throat. He had known even then. He had tried to tell her. She flipped through more pages, her eyes darting across the hurried script. Entries chronicled his increasingly obsessive visits to the playground, his observations of the missing children, his growing conviction that something sinister was at play. He wrote about shadows that moved when no one was there, about faint whispers carried on the wind, about a recurring symbol he kept finding etched into the old oak tree, a broken circle. Then she found an entry that made her blood run cold. It was dated the day before he vanished. Asterisk, I figured it out. The symbol, it's a key, a trigger. And the disappearances, they're not random, they're specific. The playground isn't just where they vanish, it's how they vanish. It's a gate, a doorway to something else. And the children, they aren't gone. Not entirely. They're just displaced, trapped. And the one who controls the gate, the one who watches, he's always here. He moves between the places. He feeds on the fear, on the despair. He's been here for decades, maybe centuries. And he's waiting for the right moment. Waiting for someone to find the key. Waiting for someone to try and open the gate. Waiting for me. Or maybe waiting for you, Emily. Asterisk. Her eyes widened, fixed on the last sentence. Waiting for you, Emily. A cold sweat slicked her skin. The journal slipped slightly in her trembling hands. She looked up from the page, her gaze sweeping across the silent, spectral playground. The swing seemed to sway imperceptibly. A faint, almost inaudible creak echoed from the slide. Then from the deep, impenetrable shadows beneath the fort, she saw it. 2 pinpricks of light, glowing with an unnatural crimson hue, staring directly at her. They weren't moving. They were simply there, unblinking, utterly fixed. And they were getting closer. Slowly, inexorably. The crimson pinpricks pulsed, an infernal heartbeat in the suffocating gloom. Jessica's own heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drum against the silence. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to scream, to simply vanish. But the space was too confined, the air too thick with an unseen presence. She scrambled back, her hands scraping against the rough concrete floor. The smell of damp earth and something acrid metallic filling her nostrils. The eyes didn't just glow, they seemed to burn, boring into her very soul, stripping away her courage piece by agonizing piece. They were closer now, the light of them expanding. No longer mere pinpricks but widening slits, revealing a deeper, more unsettling truth. They were set in something dark and vaguely humanoid, yet utterly devoid of human warmth or recognizable features. A shape began to coalesce from the oppressive shadows, a hunched form too tall, too gaunt, its movements eerily silent, devoid of any footsteps or rustle of fabric. It seemed to glide, to simply be, effortlessly closing the distance. Panic seized her, a cold, paralyzing grip. She tried to cry out, but only a choked gasp escaped her throat. The creature, or whatever it was almost upon her. She could feel the chill radiating from it, a cold that seeped into her bones, making her teeth chatter uncontrollably. The air grew heavy like static electricity before a storm, pressing down on her, stealing her breath. Then a sudden guttural roar from above the chamber, a sound of pure fury and desperation that ripped through the oppressive silence. Michael. He was trying to get to her. The sound, raw and primal, seemed to momentarily disrupt the creature's silent advance. The crimson eyes flickered, just for an instant, a brief hesitation. That was all Jessica needed. Adrenaline surged, overcoming the paralysis. She didn't think, she reacted. Scrambling to her feet, she lunged not towards the tunnel entrance, but deeper into the chamber, hoping to flank it, to create even a sliver of distance. Her hand brushed against something cold and slick on the wall, a metal pipe, thick with grime. Without conscious thought, she ripped it free, a desperate, clumsy move, the sound of tearing metal echoing jarringly in the confined space. The pipe was heavy, unwieldy, but it was something. The creature reacted, its head snapping towards the sound of the pipe. It moved with a terrifying speed, a blurred shadow that seemed to stretch and distort in the limited light. It wasn't running, it was flowing, a dark current towards her. She swung the pipe wildly, a desperate, untrained arc. It connected with something solid, a sickening thud that vibrated up her arms. A low, guttural hiss like air escaping a punctured tire filled the chamber, accompanied by a sudden intense wave of that metallic, acrid smell, now tinged with something sickeningly organic. The crimson eyes flared, bright with what felt like pure, concentrated malice. The creature recoiled, a movement so swift it was almost imperceptible, disappearing back into the deeper shadows from which it had emerged, leaving only the lingering cold and the foul stench. Jessica stood panting, the heavy pipe shaking in her trembling hands, her heart threatening to explode from her chest. From above, Michael's voice, hoarse with strain, pierced the lingering terror. "Jessica, are you okay? What's happening down there? Michael, get down here. Something is down here." Her voice was a ragged whisper, barely audible, but laced with an undeniable terror. She heard the frantic scraping and groaning of metal as Michael redoubled his efforts to widen the opening. The creature, for now, remained hidden, a malevolent presence lurking just beyond her sight, its crimson eyes no longer visible, but their image burned into her mind. Jessica backed slowly towards the entrance, keeping the pipe raised, her eyes darting into every recess of the chamber, straining to see through the oppressive darkness. Moments later, a beam of light cut through the gloom. Michael, his face pale and streaked with sweat, finally managed to force his way through the opening. His powerful flashlight, which he had quickly retrieved from the bag, illuminated the small chamber, banishing some of the crushing darkness, but not the fear. He dropped to the floor, his eyes wide with alarm as he took in Jessica's trembling form, the makeshift weapon in her hand, the raw terror etched on her face. "Jessica, what was it? What happened?" he demanded, his voice low and urgent as he swept the flashlight beam around the chamber. The light revealed rough-hewn walls, the dirt floor, and the broken metal pipe, but no creature. I don't know," she stammered, her voice still shaky. "Eyes, crimson eyes. It was a thing, not human. It moved so fast, so silently. I hit it with this." She gestured with the pipe. It hissed. It was cold, Michael. So cold. Michael's flashlight beam landed on a dark, viscous stain on the concrete floor where Jessica had struck. It was thick, almost tar-like, and gave off that same sickening metallic and organic odor. He knelt, his face grim, and touched it cautiously with the tip of his gloved finger. It was cold, unnaturally so, and oddly gelatinous. "What is this?" he murmured, pulling his hand back. "This isn't blood. It's something else." He shone the light further into the chamber, revealing a narrow, almost impossibly dark passage leading off into the deeper unknown. "It went that way, didn't it?" Jessica nodded, unable to speak, her gaze fixed on the inky blackness of the passage. The fear was still a living thing inside her, a cold knot in her stomach. "We need to get out of here," Michael said, his voice firm, his eyes scanning the passage, then the main chamber, then Jessica. "We're not equipped for this. This isn't just a hidden room, Jessica. This is something else entirely." He helped her climb out of the chamber, his strong hand steadying her as she scrambled back up. Once they were both out, he swiftly pulled the heavy metal plate back over the opening, securing it as best he could, though the sense of vulnerability remained. The familiar sounds of the playground, the creaking chains, the rustling leaves, now seemed eerily normal after the horror they had just faced. They leaned against the base of the swings, both breathing heavily, trying to calm their racing hearts. The faint light from the distant streetlights cast long, shifting shadows around them. I've never felt anything like that," Jessica finally managed, wrapping her arms around herself, still shivering despite the mild night air. "It wasn't an animal, Michael, and it certainly wasn't human. It was malevolent, like it was made of pure malice." Michael nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the ground where the chamber lay hidden. "That stain, it wasn't blood. Felt alien. And the way you described it, moving silent, fast like a shadow. What if this is what Sarah was talking about in her journal? The thing in the tunnels? The game?" "The game," Jessica repeated, the words sounding hollow and terrifying in the night. She said they were forced to play. Emily, she was last seen on these swings. Was she taken into that chamber? Is that creature guarding her? Or is it what took her? A new horrifying thought struck her. And Daniel. He knew about the tunnels. He knew about the game. Is he involved with that? Michael rubbed a hand over his face, his brow furrowed in deep thought. It's all connected, Jessica. The journal, the tunnels, the disappearances, David's strange behavior, and now this thing. We have to reconsider everything. This isn't a simple missing persons case anymore. This is something out of a nightmare. But what do we do? Jessica asked, her voice laced with despair. We can't go back down there without knowing what we're up against. And we can't just leave it. Emily, Sarah, they could still be down there. Michael looked up at the moon, a sliver of silver hanging in the ink-black sky, casting an ethereal glow over the silent playground. We go to the police. Officer Miller. We tell him everything, even if it sounds insane. The journal, the tunnels, the hidden chamber, and what you just encountered. We tell him about David, about Daniel. We have to. We're out of our depth. He won't believe us, Michael, Jessica said, shaking her head. A creature? Crimson eyes? He'll think we're crazy, or making it up to cover something. He has to, Michael insisted, his jaw set. We have enough evidence now. The journal is real. The chamber is real. The stains are real. We'll present it logically as much as we can. We'll emphasize the danger. If he dismisses it, then we figure out a new plan. But we can't face that thing alone. We need help, equipped help. And we need to protect ourselves. He took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping across the deserted playground, every shadow now seeming to hold a hidden threat. We're going to get answers, Jessica. We're going to find out what happened to Emily and Sarah. And we're going to make sure whatever that was, it never hurts anyone else. But first we go to the authorities. We lay it all out. And we pray they listen. The silence of the playground, once merely unsettling, now felt profoundly menacing. The swings swayed gently in an unseen breeze, their chains groaning a lullaby of lingering dread. The crimson eyes might be gone, but their burning image remained, a chilling promise of the terror that still lurked beneath the innocent surface of the empty playground. The silence that followed was not empty, but thick, heavy, laden with the weight of unspeakable things. David and Emily stood frozen, their breath catching in their throats, their eyes scanning the desolate expanse of the playground, as if expecting the crimson pinpricks to ignite again in the darkness. The air around them felt colder, sharper, carrying a faint metallic tang that prickled at their senses. It was the smell of old iron and something else, something ancient and deeply unsettling. What was that? Emily whispered, her voice barely audible, a fragile thread in the oppressive quiet. Her hand instinctively reached for David's, her grip tight, almost painful. David couldn't answer. His mind was a whirlwind of primal fear and a desperate, illogical need for understanding. He knew with a horrifying certainty that they couldn't just turn and run. Not yet. Not when the answers felt so agonizingly close, pulsating beneath the very ground they stood on. The terror was a siren song, luring them deeper into the mystery. His gaze fell to the base of the swing set, the very spot where the crimson eyes had seemed to materialize. The ground there was slightly disturbed, as if something had been recently unearthed, then hastily covered. It was a faint detail, one he would have dismissed as animal activity moments before, but now it screamed out as a deliberate, almost taunting clue. "Look," David murmured, his voice hoarse, pointing a trembling finger. "There near the post." Emily followed his gaze, her eyes widening. A small dark rectangle was barely visible, peeking out from beneath a thin layer of earth and fallen leaves. It was too regular, too intentional to be natural. A shiver traced its way down her spine, but a strange, morbid curiosity propelled her forward. Together they knelt, their hearts hammering against their ribs. David used the edge of his shoe to scrape away the loose soil, his fingers digging carefully into the damp earth. The object revealed itself to be a small, weathered wooden box about the size of a shoebox, its surface scarred by time and moisture. It had no lock, no hinges, just a simple, almost crude construction, as if a child had made it. With a collective intake of breath, David pried open the lid. Inside, nestled amongst decaying leaves and soil, were a few items. A tarnished silver locket, its delicate chain snapped. A small faded drawing on brittle paper, depicting a stick figure child holding hands with another, larger figure with oddly elongated limbs and two prominent red dots for eyes. And finally, a stack of thin yellowed pages, bound together with a fraying piece of twine. A journal. Emily's hand trembled as she reached for the pages. "It's a diary," she whispered. "From a child." David pulled out his phone, its flashlight beam cutting through the oppressive darkness, illuminating the faded, childlike script. The first few entries were innocent, mundane, dated decades ago. October 12th. Today I played on the swings. Sarah pushed me so high I felt like I could touch the clouds. I wish she would stay after dark. My mom says I have to come home when the streetlights come on, but I love the playground best when it's quiet. They flipped to the next page, a growing sense of dread coiling in their stomachs. October 19th. I found a new friend. He only comes out after dark when everyone else is gone. He has pretty red eyes like shiny marbles. He doesn't talk much, but he smiles a lot, and he knows all the best games. We played hide and seek, but he's really good at hiding. He always finds me even when I hide under the slide. Emily gasped, her fingers tracing the words, a cold knot forming in her stomach. "Red eyes," she breathed. David's face was pale in the harsh light of the phone. They continued to read, the entries becoming progressively more unsettling. November 3rd. My new friend says I'm special. He says no one else understands me like he does. He told me a secret, that the swings whisper when no one is listening. I tried it and they do. They groan and creak, almost like they're singing. My friend says they're singing for me. November 15th. Mom says I'm spending too much time at the playground. She says I look tired, but I can't stop. My friend is waiting. He gets sad if I don't come. He says we have to play forever. He taught me to make promises. Promises you can never break. I promised I'd always play with him. The playful innocence in the early entries had vanished, replaced by a growing sense of isolation and a chilling dependency. The child's handwriting, once neat, was becoming more frantic, the letters slanted and uneven. December 1st. My friend isn't always nice. Sometimes he gets mad when I want to go home. He holds my hand really tight, and his eyes glow brighter. He told me a story about children who never leave the playground. He says they're still playing even now. I don't want to be one of them. A profound chill permeated the air around them. The swings, which had been still, now began to sway ever so slightly, a barely perceptible movement that seemed to respond to the words being read aloud. The chains emitted a faint metallic whisper, a ghostly echo of the singing Lily had described. December 10th. I tried to tell Sarah about my friend, but he made her go away. He whispered something and she just walked off like she couldn't see me anymore. He says he wants me all to himself. He says the playground is our secret place. He doesn't like other people here. December 18th. I'm scared. My friend's eyes aren't pretty anymore. They're burning. He wants me to stay here forever and ever. He says if I leave, he'll be lonely. He says he'll find me. He says he knows my favorite spot under the slide. And he knows what promises mean. The final page was barely legible, stained with what looked like old watermarks and smudges. The handwriting was a desperate scrawl, barely holding together coherent words. December 24th. It's Christmas Eve. I should be home, but he won't let me. He says we have one more game. The best game. He says I have to hide and he'll find me. And when he finds me, we'll never stop playing. He says he wants me to join the others, the ones who sing with the swings. Help me. He's here. He's always here. His eyes are watching. He wants to keep me. He wants to keep us all. The whisper in the chains, it's his voice. It's him. Don't play here after midnight. He's waiting. The last word trailed off into a frantic, indecipherable scribble. The date was December 24th, decades ago. Lily, the child in the drawing, holding hands with the red-eyed figure. A cold, suffocating realization dawned on David and Emily. This wasn't just a ghost story. It was a desperate warning from a child trapped in an eternal game. The box slipped from Emily's trembling fingers, the brittle pages scattering across the damp earth. The locket lay open, revealing a faded photograph of a smiling young girl with bright, innocent eyes. Lily. As if on cue, a low guttural moan rumbled from beneath their feet, vibrating through the ground. The swings began to move again, not gently this time, but with a deliberate rhythmic creak, picking up speed, swinging higher and higher into the oppressive darkness, each arc accompanied by a chilling groan of metal against metal. It was the singing Lily had described, a macabre lullaby that now felt like a predatory chant. The air grew impossibly colder, a pervasive chill that seeped into their bones, stealing their breath. They were no longer just observers of a strange phenomenon. They had unearthed a truth, a painful ancient secret, and in doing so, they had drawn the attention of the very entity Lily had warned them about. A whisper, faint at first, then growing in intensity, slithered through the darkness, seeming to emanate from the very chains of the swings. It wasn't words, not exactly, but a discordant symphony of sibilant sounds, a promise of eternal play, of endless games. It was the entity. It knew they had the journal. It knew they knew. Suddenly, two pinpricks of crimson light ignited in the deep shadows beneath the towering slide, directly opposite them. Then another pair, closer to the merry-go-round, and another near the climbing frame. They weren't just the eyes of a single entity. They were everywhere, dozens of them like scattered embers in the darkness, surrounding them, slowly closing in. Each pair burned with the same malevolent intensity, the same predatory hunger described in Lily's final desperate entry. The playground was no longer empty. It was filled with silent, unseen watchers, the trapped souls of children, or perhaps the multiple manifestations of the entity itself, all drawn by the revelation. David and Emily were trapped in the middle, caught in a game they never asked to play. A game that, according to Lily, never ended. The whispers intensified, morphing into a chorus of chilling, childlike giggles that echoed from every shadow, every creak of the swings, a terrifying invitation to join the eternal play. They were no longer just hearing the playground's secrets. They were in them, and the red eyes were watching, waiting, promising that their game was just beginning. The air itself seemed to crackle, charged with an ancient malevolence that had been dormant for decades, now fully awakened. The moment the red eyes multiplied, the playground didn't just come alive, it screamed. A low guttural roar vibrated through the ground, shaking the very foundations of the old equipment. The swings, which had been gently swaying, now thrashed wildly, their chains rattling like 1,000 panicked breaths. The slides, once dull and rusted, gleamed with an unnatural, sickly purple luminescence, as if beckoning them into an abyss. The merry-go-round, previously frozen in time, spun with terrifying speed, its rusted horses blurring into a carousel of spectral phantoms. Michael, Jessica, David, and Emily were no longer observers. They were players in a game they never agreed to join, a game with rules written in fear and played for souls. The red eyes, countless now, swirled around them, forming a shifting, undulating barrier of crimson light. They weren't just watching, they were closing in. "We need to move," Michael yelled, his voice barely a whisper against the cacophony. He grabbed Jessica's hand, his grip tight. David, his face pale with terror, stumbled back, bumping into Emily. "Where do we go?" Emily shrieked, pointing a trembling finger. "It's everywhere." Indeed, the playground had become a maze of shifting shadows and distorted reality. The trees surrounding the perimeter seemed to grow taller, their branches twisting into grasping claws. The ground under their feet felt spongy, as if the earth itself was trying to swallow them whole. Whispers, faint at first, then growing louder, slithered into their minds, not from any discernible source, but from within them. "You should have stayed away. Another lost soul. Play with us, forever." These weren't just disembodied voices. They were their own fears, their own regrets, amplified and twisted. Jessica gasped, clutching her head. "It's inside my mind. I can hear them. They know what I'm thinking." Suddenly, a spectral child, its eyes glowing red, darted past David, brushing against his arm. The touch was like ice, searing cold, and David cried out, stumbling into the sandbox. He tried to scramble out, but the sand seemed to cling to him, pulling him deeper. "Help me! It's pulling me down!" Michael and Emily rushed to him, pulling with all their might. The sand resisted, as if alive, but together they managed to yank him free. As David staggered to his feet, panting, his eyes wide with fear, a small, rusted shovel in the sandbox began to dig on its own, rapidly unearthing something beneath the surface. It was a faded, tattered doll, its button eyes missing, its fabric stained with what looked like dried mud and something darker. As the doll was revealed, a chilling, mournful sob echoed through the playground, a sound so profound it pierced their very souls. "That's it!" Emily suddenly exclaimed, her eyes fixed on the doll. "The legend! They said a child, Sarah, was buried somewhere in the park, clutching her favorite doll. They never found the doll. Or her body." The red eyes intensified, swirling faster, converging towards the doll. It was as if the playground itself was reacting to the revelation, protecting its secret, yet simultaneously drawn to it. Michael felt a surge of adrenaline cutting through his terror. If that doll is Sarah's, maybe it's the key. Maybe it's what's anchoring all of this. But as he reached for it, the merry-go-round suddenly spun faster, its spectral horses lunging outwards, their mouths open in silent screams. A gust of freezing wind, carrying the scent of damp earth and decay, swept through them, pushing them back. The red eyes pulsed, growing brighter, forming a monstrous, singular vortex above the doll. A gaping maw of crimson light. "It doesn't want us to touch it," Jessica cried, shielding her eyes. "It's protecting something." "No," Emily corrected, her voice trembling but resolute. "It's feeding on it. On the pain, the forgotten tragedy. Sarah's spirit. It's trapped, and something else is using her despair." The whispers grew into a cacophony of anguished cries, children's voices intermingling with a deeper, more ancient groan. The red vortex pulsed, and for a horrifying moment, they saw fleeting images within its depths. A little girl alone crying, then a shadowy figure, not human, bending over her. It was a fragment of the past, a memory replayed through the playground's tormented soul. "We have to stop it," Michael declared, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. "If that doll is Sarah's, if it's the anchor, maybe we can free her. Maybe we can break this curse." David, though still shaking, nodded. "How? What do we do?" Emily's gaze was fixed on the doll, then on the swirling red vortex. "It's fear that fuels it. The legend said Sarah was forgotten, left behind. Maybe we need to remember her, to acknowledge her, to show compassion, not fear." It was a desperate gamble. Confronting pure malevolence with empathy felt absurd, suicidal even. But what other choice did they have? Running was useless. The playground had become their prison. Michael took a deep breath, trying to steady his pounding heart. He stepped forward, pushing past the invisible resistance, the icy tendrils of fear trying to wrap around his legs. Jessica, then David, then Emily followed, forming a tight circle around him. "Sarah," Michael called out, his voice echoing unnaturally against the playground's roars. "We know you're here. We know what happened." The red vortex above the doll pulsed violently, shrinking slightly, as if momentarily recoiling from the direct address. The whispers momentarily faltered, replaced by a low guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the very ground. "You were left alone," Jessica added, her voice soft but clear. "Forgotten. We're so sorry, Sarah." As she spoke, a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer of blue light flickered within the red vortex, quickly swallowed by the crimson. It was Sarah's essence, struggling against its tormentor. "We're not afraid of you anymore," Emily declared, her voice gaining strength. "We're here to help you, Sarah." This seemed to enrage the entity. The red eyes flared, and the ground beneath them erupted. Rusted chains shot up from the earth, trying to ensnare their legs. The swing swung wildly, their seats slicing through the air like blunt blades, forcing them to duck and weave. The merry-go-round horses bucked and thrashed, their spectral forms attempting to trample them. Michael saw his opening. The doll, momentarily exposed as the vortex recoiled, seemed to glow faintly with that same blue light. He lunged, ignoring the spectral attacks, enduring the icy blasts of fear that threatened to paralyze him. His fingers brushed against the tattered fabric, and a jolt, not of cold but of profound sorrow, shot through him. He clutched the doll, pulling it from the sand. As he did, the red vortex above them shrieked, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage and agony. It was the sound of something losing its power, its sustenance. The red eyes began to unravel, flickering like dying embers. "Go! Get out of here!" Michael yelled, holding the doll tightly. "I'll follow." But Jessica wouldn't leave him. "No! We do this together." She grabbed Michael's free hand, Emily and David forming a protective circle, their shoulders pressed together. With the doll in Michael's grasp, the playground's fury intensified, but it also became more desperate, less focused. The entity was fighting for its very existence. "We remember you, Sarah," Emily shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You are not forgotten. Rest now, Sarah," David added, tears streaming down his face, not from fear, but from the raw, overwhelming sadness emanating from the doll. As their words of compassion, of remembrance, washed over the playground, the red vortex began to shrink, to pulsate with less intensity. The red eyes, one by one, flickered and vanished, like candles extinguished by an unseen wind. The spectral horses on the merry-go-round slowed, their forms becoming transparent before dissolving into mist. The swings creaked to a halt, then hung motionless. The slides lost their sickly glow. The roars and whispers faded, replaced by a profound, echoing silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. A silence so complete it felt heavier than any noise. Then from the doll in Michael's hands, a soft, ethereal blue light emanated, enveloping it completely. It wasn't cold or terrifying. It was warm, comforting, like a mother's embrace. The light pulsed gently, then slowly, gracefully, rose into the night sky, carrying with it a faint, almost heard child's laugh, sweet and innocent, free of torment. As the blue light dissolved among the stars, the doll in Michael's hands turned to dust, crumbling into fine particles that scattered on the wind. The playground stood still, utterly, unnervingly still. The four friends stood there, panting, their hearts hammering in their chests, the adrenaline slowly receding, leaving them hollow and exhausted. The playground was just a playground again. Rusted, neglected, empty. The red eyes were gone. The sounds had ceased. The terror had lifted. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They simply turned, their movements stiff and disjointed, and walked. They walked past the silent swings, the inert slides, the motionless merry-go-round. They walked out of the gate, their footsteps heavy on the cracked asphalt, never once looking back. They didn't stop until they reached Michael's car, parked several blocks away. They piled in, the silence inside the vehicle even more profound than the one they had left behind. Michael started the engine, and the mundane hum of the car felt like a lifeline, pulling them back from the precipice of madness. They drove away, leaving the playground fading in the rearview mirror, a dark, silent silhouette against the pre-dawn sky. They never spoke of that night again, not to each other, not to anyone else. What could they say? How could they explain the playground that screamed, the red eyes that hunted, the child spirit they had helped release? No one would believe them. They barely believed it themselves, even with the indelible scars etched onto their souls. Life went on. They went back to their jobs, their routines, their attempts at normalcy. But something within each of them had fundamentally shifted. Michael found himself glancing over his shoulder more often, a prickle of unease whenever a shadow lengthened unexpectedly. David developed an aversion to sandboxes, a deep-seated revulsion he couldn't explain. Emily, once so fearless, found herself starting at sudden noises, her nights plagued by dreams of creaking metal and whispering voices. And Jessica, who had always been the most sensitive, the most attuned to unseen presences, sometimes in the quietest moments, when the world was still and silent, would catch a fleeting glimpse. A flicker of crimson in a window reflection, a momentary glint of red in the depths of a dark pond, or the brief phantom sensation of tiny, cold fingers brushing against her arm. The playground was quiet now. The red eyes were gone. Sarah's spirit was finally at peace. But the playground itself, it remained. An empty shell, a silent sentinel. And sometimes on the softest breeze, when the moon hung high and full, a faint, distant creak could be heard from its depths. A single slow swing swaying gently back and forth. Waiting, always waiting, for the next game, for the next forgotten soul. Because some places once awakened never truly sleep. They only rest. And the empty playground after midnight, it was resting. For now.